podcast role. Welcome in.
You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast, a proud member of the Podcast Roll Network. Hello, Jamie.
Hello, Peter.
Typically I do that before you come on, and I say, hello, Jamie. And then we have like pre-banter and stuff, and they're like, all right, let's get started. And then you say, hello, Peter.
Hello,
and then
Peter.
I cut out everything else, and it's just, hello, Jamie. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Peter.
I know. Because last week you said, ¿Cómo estás? And then you kept talking about something else, so I had to cut that out. So it's just, hello, Peter. The magic behind the pulling the curtain back.
Are you ready? ¿Cómo estás, Peter?
Muy bien. Okay,
Bueno.
listen. How's that? I was on a podcast today.
Funny.
Yeah. It'll air just a couple of days before this episode is released. And it's called EdTech Insiders Podcast with Ben Cornell. And they're really popular. And their format is really interesting. They sort of curate all the articles from the week about technology. They're really clear on it's about ed tech in terms of not about the tech, but really about education and what can technology do to improve education. And we talked about a lot of things, a number of things, particularly around AI. I referenced a student walkout on AI. The kids wanted to be able to use AI and the school said no. And then I talked a little bit about impact speech and the ability to leverage speech language services as well as AI to capture what students are saying and practicing, and then giving a summary to the therapist. And we talked about schools in general and the pathways and preparing kids for life and my own reversal as a leader, which is what ties us to today's conversation about Jason and Heukelum, is because I entered leadership really thinking about 4-year colleges as sort of the destination and quickly learning from my peers and my colleagues how important it is to really think about 2-year, 4-year internships, going into the workplace, joining the military, those types of pathways, and then how schools can support. And I think Jason's doing that in his district, in particular in Virginia, in looking at making sure that every child has an opportunity to participate in a career and technical education course, and that it not just be reserved for some, it is reserved for all. And that's a big part of what they do. I thought that was really kind of a nice thing that I want people to listen for as they visit with our guest today.
Yeah, I do concur. That is probably one of the more innovative parts of the conversation is about this. It's mandated in their system. Everybody goes through it. Everybody goes through CTE. And I'm interested. Like, it had me asking the age-old Post-it question of why didn't you ask him about how that works?
Well, I guess maybe in my mind, I thought, I know how this works. And you know, but here's the thing, having been a superintendent, and maybe we're getting into it too early because I think it's important for everyone to hear the conversation. I will say there's a mindset shift that counselors need within the schools to rethink about pathways for kids. That when we say we're preparing kids for college and careers, sometimes I think that careers is college. Like the careers that they're going to pursue are going to require a 4-year degree. And so really expanding that to be college, career, and life, so that we're really thinking about what are the skills and mindsets that children need to be successful in life.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. And it leans into the thing that came to my mind. I'll say the guy, I feel like I'm often the guy on this podcast that's like, let me tell you what it simply says to me. The simple version to me, because I don't know, am I overly simplistic? Maybe.
No, I think you boil it down really well. I'm married to someone who summarizes so well. And I'm like, what was that Bill Murray movie where he's in Japan and he said said something. Yeah, Lost in Translation. And he says something, and then the translator talks forever, and he's oh, what? Like all I said was, like, I feel like I'm like the translator, like where I just go on forever, and then you're like, this is what I heard.
Hattori time. I love that movie. I think that movie's spectacular. Here's what I would say that I think is really interesting. Basically made me think of like, wouldn't it be amazing now at my age where I've been an educator for 30 plus years I'm finding myself really wishing I knew how to build a deck. I want to know how to build a deck. I want to know how to do woodworking. And it almost as if there was a mindset around those types of courses that wasn't about, these are basic things that have to do with, like, when you are renting or owning a home, living in a home, knowing some of these things will help you maintain that place to live. That's helpful.
Yeah.
So you're not always
essential, not even helpful, that you don't have to call someone to do it, right?
Exactly.
And so, and I think that's kind of the attitude that Jason and his team have, is like, hey, every kid's got to take it. And in fact, it will enhance their quality of life, certainly. And if they're so concerned about entering college, it's going to enhance their application, because they can speak to a skill set that potentially they didn't have previously.
Right. Anyway, there's a lot of opening. We're open.
I know. People are like, should I even listen?
Give it all.
Yeah, you should listen to it.
Go listen to this.
All right. So, but here's the thing, because we do have a sponsor. And Jason, he warns in his conversation around testing obsession that it can suck the joy out of schools and sideline innovation. But you don't have to choose between test scores and student agency. IXL is the research-proven platform used in 96 of the top 100 U.S. school districts. So, with personalized test prep and real-time data, IXL helps schools outperform on state tests, giving the leaders the freedom. You want freedom, right? We all want freedom.
I do.
It gives them the freedom to focus on what matters most, and that's preparing kids for life. So, reclaim the joy of learning. Visit IXL.com/imperfect.
Let's go.
You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendent and Leadership Podcast. I am Peter Stiefelman.
And I'm Jamie Alanson.
We will see you on the other side. Today on An Imperfect Leader, my guest is Dr. Jason Van Heukelum, the Superintendent of Winchester Public Schools in Virginia. And with nearly 30 years of experience as a math teacher, a principal, and even an international school director, he brings a deep belief that great schools combine high expectations with a strong connection to community to maximize student potential. Jason, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so happy to meet you, and I'm so happy to spend some time with you. I was going to say my friend, but I think our friend, Jason Rapoon at What Schools Could Be podcast, he told me we have to meet. If Josh says we have to meet, then we have to meet. So I'm glad that happened. And he compared you, I love this, to a modern day Tom Sawyer. And it wasn't about mischief or trickery. It was, maybe to some extent, it was about that sort of fence painting scene where Tom gets everyone excited to do what maybe has been seen as hard work. But I believe you have a similar gift, and you rally people around bold ideas. And I, just out of the gate, kind of want to understand how you do that. How do you get a whole community to feel the same kind of enthusiasm and ownership around the vision for Winchester Public Schools?
Yeah, well, that's great. First of all, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and just share my story. As a leader, been here in Winchester now going on 10 years as superintendent. And
way beyond the national average. Well,
that's right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. So I've been very fortunate to have a fantastic school board, many of whom have rolled off and new folks have come on. But the community of Winchester is just a little gem in the heart of the Shenandoah Valley. And they have a long history, well before my time, of strong commitment to public education and doing what's right by student and supporting public education. So I've been very fortunate in that sense. So the Tom Sawyer analogy comes from my mother, and she has said that about me for many years, going all the way back to my childhood. And I think the key pieces of that I've carried forward in my leadership experience is casting a bold vision that is imaginative, maybe even provocative, and speaks to the heart of what people in the field really know should be done, but may seem somewhat audacious and impossible. I think many of us in the field that have been doing this work for many years have cut our teeth on No Child Left Behind, a testing regime that is consistently and constantly pointing out where we fail.
Yep, coaching for compliance as opposed to authentic,
absolutely.
genuine peer coaching and coaching of others.
Yeah. And so many of my ideas in the past and now really center around how do we awaken students and teachers to the joy and creativity that I believe is inside of them that to some extent has been squashed by a narrative around the country that public schools are not good enough, that the testing is never good enough, and that our processes aren't working and kids are getting a bad education. And I find that when I speak to the heart of humanity, many times people, it resonates with people, teachers, students, parents, community members, because at the end of the day, school's purpose, broadly defined by most people, is to prepare kids for life and to become future adults that, yes, can have a meaningful career and make a meaningful wage to support themselves and a family, but also have meaning and connection to themselves personally. And many times I find that our current context of a very heavy-handed testing regime and accountability has sucked the life out of schools. And so to what extent can we rally and recreate and reshape the narrative to something different?
I like that. You talk about testing, and it makes me think of where I was superintendent. I was in Columbia, Missouri, so the University of Missouri was there. So that's my context. And I can remember when the accounting school, at the business school there, boasted that they had 100% passing rate for the accounting exam. And everyone said that is the strength of that program. And then the moment that the College of Education said that they had 100% who passed the exam to become a teacher, they said, well, it must be too easy an exam. And then similarly, when only 45 or 50% passed the bar exam, they said, what a rigorous exam. And then when 50% were considered proficient or advanced on the K-12 state testing, they said, what a failure of the public schools. It was always, I could never figure out the narrative of how it was a lose proposition. And I love the fact that you're saying we shouldn't even be talking about the tests. We ought to take tests to be able to show meaningful growth. They ought to give us an indication of how we're doing as a system. When they become high stakes, and that's the only way that we talk about the health of an institution, we've failed. And so what I have really appreciated about learning about you is some of this work that you're doing, particularly around preparing children for an ever-changing and unpredictable world. And if I could, I'd like to talk a little bit about this. I sometimes anchor it in the leadership model that I use to advise others. So there's this dimension, nested patterns.
Okay.
And it's the muscle of the work that we do as leaders. It speaks to how we want to be together. And in that dimension, there are two terms, creativity and curiosity. And I think it speaks to, those terms speak to innovation. And so that leads me to something that I think that is very important to you and to your community. The Emil and Grace Shahadah Innovation Center. And the Emil and Grace Shahadah Innovation Center has been called a cathedral to possibility. I love that. There are no bells. There are no rigid tracks. There's a buffet of options for kids. And it's been referred to as multiple choices. And then, of course, you have this documentary that's come out for which you are a major part of called Multiple Choices. And so I wonder, maybe we could start with the Innovation Center, because I think it really speaks to this vision that both you and your community had for kids. And then we'll talk through a little bit more about multiple choice, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, we're very proud of the Innovation Center. And in simplest terms, it is a connection point to our high school. We're a one high school town, so John Hanley High School. And so essentially the origins of the Innovation Center is we had an elementary school about 500 yards from our high school, a very traditional high school that you would find in anywhere USA. And that elementary school had been moved to a new building. So it was an empty elementary school and sat empty for approximately 5 years. And all the while we were discussing as a community, what's the best way to repurpose that building? At the time, our career technical education was literally in the basement of our very traditional high school. Not a nice space for any classes, let alone carpentry and welding. No windows, not a lot of ventilation, low ceilings, et cetera.
I imagine for the children who are attending those courses are also the message that they're being given in terms
100%. Yeah, it was literally in the basement. We definitely wanted to elevate career technical education, where our community is one of the fastest growing communities in Virginia. There's a lot of hand-wringing around the future workforce, especially in the trades, healthcare, and technology, which are three of the big driving industries in our area. And that was one of the primary motivators. And then we really started unpacking some of our data. And I love this kind of data piece, which is, and this is true for a lot of places in America, about 40 to 45% of our students would say they're pursuing a 4-year college degree after graduation, which immediately means 50 to 55% are not, right? But on top of that, what makes that statistic even more jaw-dropping is nationally we know that only about half of students finish a 4-year degree 6 years after starting it. And so if you use that same modeling for our students, it really means that about 20% of my graduates actually finish a 4-year college degree. And if we're honest,
20% are saddled with incredible loans and no degree.
yes, that's right. Yeah. And that's a great point. It's not only are you saddled with some debt, potentially, likely, in the new economy, the economy of today, having a bachelor's degree is not the guarantee it once was, right? It does not necessarily mean you're going to make a wage worthy of a bachelor's degree. And so it really begs a lot of questions about what are we doing? And if we're honest with ourselves, high schools in America are exclusively designed to send kids to college. The Carnegie Unit, the Latinized curriculum, everyone's got to take 4 Englishes, 4 maths, 4 sciences, et cetera. There's no room for much of anything else. Maybe I'll grab an art class, a couple band classes. It's like a cafeteria of different things that really don't have any meaning together, don't connect to each other, and certainly are not aligned to the real world of work. And so we looked at that data and said, what are we doing? And to the extent that we can change things within the current paradigm of what's required from the state level, we wanted to do that. And we created the Innovation Center. We remodeled the old elementary school, and we now have 3 academies up there. We have a Health Sciences Academy, Professional Skills, which is your typical trades, and Advanced Technologies Academy up there. And I tell people what makes it innovative is not that we're doing CTE. What makes it innovative is 2 things. One, we require every kid to go through the Innovation Center, which means we have put a stake in the ground and said, I don't care if you're a college-going family and you expect your kid to go to UVA, Harvard, et cetera. We believe there's value in these career classes, this exploration. And it also, by saying all, it does 2 things. It forces that social cohesion to happen within our classrooms. Because again, if we're honest with ourselves, most high schools segregate during the school day. It doesn't matter how diverse you are. The AP kids go left and the work kids go right, and they don't meet until the football field. And so we have a space now where all kids are all together. And that's been a really special thing. The other thing that makes it...
I wonder, can I interrupt for a second? I wonder if kids have said to their counselors, boy, my God, I got to take this class. There's no way I could have convinced my parents to allow me to do it.
I'm not sure if we've had that exact conversation. I think we have. I couldn't speak to it personally. What I can tell you is when we launched, we being the leadership, were somewhat afraid of that typical college-going family, which we have a sliver of that here in Winchester. My family is that family. I expect my kid, the DNA of my child was born.
I know. Yeah.
I can tell you, Peter, we have had 0 pushback. It's been like, it's almost like we've given them permission to have fun.
Yes.
Kids are loving it. The kids go home and talk about it. The parents love it. And the silver lining for that group of students is it hasn't hurt their college application. It hasn't even been neutral. It is 100% a value add to their portfolio, their resume, their application. And the colleges and universities are grabbing our kids because of their commitment to career exploration. And I can give you a million examples.
I wonder now if you've now got a social studies class integrated with one of the CTE courses, or we had an example in our district of math, a geometry class and a home building class. A days kids took geometry and B days they took home building. And we thought it was only going to attract kids who had been unsuccessful in geometry. And it turned out to be a real mix of kids who now had the ability to build a tiny home that was then donated to a local agency so that a small family that had been unhoused now had a place to call home. And when we interviewed kids and asked them, what do you like about this class? We thought it was going to be about the geometry and the home building. And there was the human piece, which was, well, now someone won't be homeless next year. They won't be cold. And I was like, holy cow. Yeah. And so I'm just kind of curious. I'm sure those things are going to just be natural outcrops of not being separate, but really connecting to each other.
No, absolutely. And that leads to the second pillar of innovation, which is we started with an array of academic classes up there, math, science. And after 2 years, my team really said, hey, Jason, we really think we need to go all in on English, actually. And I was like scratching my head like, English? Okay, tell me more. And they really convinced me. One, it's a spiraling curriculum. It's a curriculum that's fairly malleable, not linear, right? Math is linear. You got to cover all that curriculum, et cetera. It's fairly malleable. Literature can really be differentiated by student level and interest. And then the other thing that was happening on the academic side of the house was I had one math teacher up there. I had one science teacher. They didn't have camaraderie around content. And so by having 5 English teachers up there, they essentially serve as their own professional learning community. And so I said, yeah, let's go for it. And that's been now 3 years in, and it's 100% been a home run because now I have some passionate English teachers up there that construct their curriculum that has similar themes, regardless of whether it's 9th grade English or we go all the way to AP Lit. So we offer every single possible English class at the Innovation Center. And that is because when a child goes there, they go there because of their career class, but they have to take their English class when they're there. And then that drives some of the project-based learning that we do through English and through the career classes. But that's
so marvelous.
Yeah. It was counterintuitive. Like I was just like, at first I was even like, no, can't do that. Like math, like the typical math and carpentry, that goes together. But the truth is geometry, if you really look at the curriculum, there's some measuring and a little bit, but it's like 2% of what happens.
I know. There's a lot of algebra. Yeah. Well, they had that. I will say we also had an algebra and entrepreneur class where they started a T-shirt company, because every club has T-shirts. And so they had to then use the principles of algebra to run their business, everything from inventory to pricing and things like that. Yeah, that seemed to fit even better.
Yeah.
Tell me about Multiple Choices, the documentary. Do you mind just talking about that for a moment?
Yeah, this kind of came out of nowhere. Some folks may know the What School Could Be network.
Yes.
And they have been trying to illuminate different models of education for many years, connected to Ted Dintersmith, who produced the film Most Likely to Succeed, which highlighted the work at High Tech High down in California. And so essentially what happened was Ted Dintersmith had just written a book called What School Could Be. He had toured every state in the union and looking for these pockets of innovation, and gets back, book is done, and a mutual friend of ours said, well, you should go check out Winchester. And the way he tells it is essentially he was done looking at schools. He was tired of going to schools. He said, I'll go to one more. And he called me and I said, well, you can come anytime you want. And we just do what we do. We didn't put on any dog and pony show. And he was impressed, and that built a relationship whereby he really wanted to amplify the work that we're doing. And so we made a movie about it.
I love it. It's so exciting because truly what you're doing is you're helping your peers and policymakers, hopefully, to really kind of think through, like, let's stop like burning out on remediation. Let's turn towards innovation. I think that's, as a nation, we believe in. That's what makes us exceptional. Our schools are leading the way, and they're great examples of it. I love that Ted's been doing that work. In 1910, Scott Nearing, if you're familiar with Scott Nearing, he was a sort of a disciple of Dewey, spent 2 years touring the country, and he wrote a book called The New Education. And he also was looking for innovation throughout the nation and found great examples, things that we're all doing nowadays with a reemphasis on CTE, but looking at the more place-based in terms of what is important to our local communities, and then leaning in on that and trying to find ways to have multi-age classrooms. And it's a remarkably prescient book that ought to be looked at now as well as like as a companion to Ted's work as well. So anyway, I'm super excited for you in Winchester and can't wait for this to become one of those books, one of those documentaries that we're all talking about.
Yeah, very good.
How does the term an imperfect leader resonate for you?
Yeah, it's very freeing, quite frankly, because I think sometimes in our business in particular, there's an expectation that we're perfect. And not just leaders, I would go all the way down to teachers. And it's a tough job, education. And it's a messy business because people are messy. Just our lives are messy. I don't care where you came from. My life is messy. Just a little old Winchester. We're one high school town with 4,300 kids, but I got 750 employees. Let's say 8,000 parents and 30,000 city. And we all intersect at different moments. And many times as leaders, and you can relate to this, Peter, a lot of times those intersections are around conflict. Students misbehave. Teachers misbehave. It's like you're dealing with personnel issues, or you're dealing with student discipline, or parents are wringing their hands about how to best meet the needs of their kid, whether it's academics or social, emotionally, bullying, et cetera. And we're always in the mix to come alongside.
Sure. And you mentioned the external systems too. You've got a company who wants to relocate, but they're also asking for a tax incentive. And so then the schools have to weigh in because that means a loss of property taxes that are used to support them. And so, yeah, there's so much that goes into the superintendency that freeing is a word that not anyone has said. And I've now done 160 conversations, and I find it really interesting. Freeing is an imperfect.
Well, it gives you permission to be yourself, I think. And I think for me, when I heard it, I felt free. I was like, okay, yeah. So, yeah, it's not an easy job, but we need good leaders. And I went into this business because I was looking up and didn't quite see the type of leadership that I was looking for as a teacher. Bold leadership that was done with conviction and wanted to actually make a difference versus kind of the managerial style of I just need to get through the day. So we desperately need good people.
And we'll be right back. Hey, district leaders, I know you already know this. In schools worldwide, cell phones are posing real challenges on student engagement and mental well-being. And I want you to meet Yonder, a proud sponsor of an Imperfect Leader. And let me share this story from a visit I made to some schools in Silicon Valley. I asked some kids what they liked about Yonder, and after some funny looks, they shared that actually, with Yonder, teachers don't have to battle with them over phones anymore. In fact, one kid said to me he didn't have to worry anymore about his parents texting him in class, and the kid next to him sort of shoved him and goes, "Texting? My mom used to FaceTime me in class." I want to introduce you to a support system that increases teaching and learning. I want you to discover why 1 million students choose Yonder daily. Minimize distractions, maximize learning potential. To learn more, go to overyonder.com. YONDR.
So I want to talk a minute about the Mosaic Project. It is one of our favorite organizations and has over 25 years of experience empowering students to really celebrate differences, communicate assertively, and resolve conflict peacefully at their outdoor school. I happen to have experience being part of the Mosaic Project, and so I can absolutely tell you it's an amazing organization. Their innovative SEL curriculum is now available to our Imperfect Leader audience. And so you can get a 10% discount through their new documentary film-based Mosaic Classroom Project. So just let the people know during your onboarding process to receive that 10% discount is to just mention an Imperfect Leader. Learn more about the Mosaic Project at mosaicproject.org.
This is Greg Meyer, Jamie's partner at APC Leadership Collaborative. Superintendents know that school principals are the single biggest lever that any school district has for improving student joy and success. Unfortunately, there's very little professional development for the specific things that a principal has to do to improve their school. At APC Leadership Collaborative, we specialize in coaching principals to take on audacious goals, build their leadership skills, and make big improvements in their school. If that inspires you, let's connect and talk about how we can collaborate. Find APC Leadership Collaborative online at apccolab.com.
When leaders think in systems, they think differently. They see the big picture, making decisions that create coherence and strengthen communication across their teams. They build adaptability, flexibility, and engagement. Every day, school leaders face complex challenges, from student engagement to staff alignment. What if your team could see those challenges as part of a bigger picture? That's what happens when you think in systems. It's how leaders turn complexity into connection and challenges into opportunities for growth. At the Waters Center for Systems Thinking, we help educators and organizations build this capacity, developing the habits and tools that turn vision into action. Think differently, think in systems. Sign up for our webinars, free resources, or a consultation by visiting our website, which you can find in the show notes.
We're back for segment 2 of an Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. And my guest today is Dr. Jason Van Heukelum, Superintendent of Winchester Public Schools. And in this segment, just like each week, we ask our guests to talk about a decision that they made, and then we discuss it. All right, Jason, what happened?
Well, COVID happened.
Oh, it did for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and I'm going to take a little different take on it than
Sure.
what most people might expect. In 2020, we had just started our new strategic plan called Empower 2025. And it was Winchester's first attempt to really go past knowledge as the primary goal of education. So including knowledge, of course, but past knowledge into the skills and dispositions that our students need to be successful in the 21st century. Yeah, think Portrait of a Graduate, right? P21 skills, all of those things that we've been talking about now going on 20 some years. And so we had put that stake in the ground that our educational model, our learning model would be more than just teaching kids math and reading and history, but also giving them rich experiences with learning that allowed them to metacognitively reflect on their ability to be creative and their ability to think critically. And what does that look like and feel like? And how do you do that? And so we were amped. I was excited. This 100% was where we needed to go. We were going all in on project-based learning, which is the vehicle by which I think the learning environment can change to foster those things, those skills and dispositions.
Absolutely. It's like the antidote to the focus on Carnegie units and like just because you sat here, you learned something I love it.
Yeah. And we were gearing up for that, had done some preliminary work, et cetera, had some rubrics and typical stuff that a lot of people have done. And then COVID hit. And of course, everything rightfully went on pause to manage that crisis and to make sure we were getting schools open to the extent that we could and meeting the needs of our students. And it was almost like that was the only thing we could think about. And 2021, 2022, COVID starts to fade a little bit, and then bam, we have this NAEP crisis in Virginia where, oh my gosh, test scores are down. Our kids have lost all of this ground because of school closures, et cetera. And a state and maybe even a national panic, right? That, oh my gosh, we got to double down on reading and math. And test scores became uber important around our state anyways. And in that moment, I doubled down on that too. And there was a lot of political pressure to do that. And if I'm being really reflective and honest with myself, I wish that I had held on to tightly both, right? It's a both and situation. But instead, I gave myself and my organization, all of our leaders, permission to say, let's table the skills and dispositions work. We got to focus on this right now. Because if we don't, we're going to look terrible. And we can't look terrible when it comes to test scores. And so for 23, 24, and 25, we did very little to talk about skills and dispositions, apart from this little glimmer of the Innovation Center that was launched in 2022. And so there it was happening. But kindergarten through 12th grade, at scale, all kids every day, 7 hours a day, was not happening. And I regret that. I'll be honest with you, because I'm getting too old for this. And it's like at the end of the day, when I see the kids coming out of our Innovation Center, they have agency. They have a vision for their life. They are proud of the work that they do. They have real jobs. And if you watch multiple choice, you're going to see a bunch of my kids that walk right into the workforce. And those that go on to college are better prepared than their peers who did not have that experience. And it had nothing to do with standardized testing.
Right.
And so I feel like I let myself and others down by not being ardent in that belief and conviction around the skills and dispositions and deeper learning. I'm throwing out some educational buzzwords.
No, but I love the fact you're talking about deeper learning. That is where we're all trying to get to is deeper leading, deeper learning. Project-based learning and place-based learning is a key component of those in terms of meaningful learning. And so I find this so interesting. Our first part of our conversation, all about multiple choice, all about innovation. And what I hear you saying is, yes, I believe in that. And I had what might be considered parallel play in terms of two systems that were working next to each other. And as I think back to decisions we made and the pressures we felt, which are real for so many of us in education right now. It is a real pressure. Policymakers, and we're saying, okay, I want to do right by children. And what I hear you saying is potentially what got overlooked was I allowed myself and our team to allow for this innovation track to go while not allowing there to be an on-ramp to innovation from the other track of focusing on test scores and things like that. Is that kind of
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. And you sometimes feel a little hypocritical. I certainly did, like, okay, I'm speaking innovation over here.
Right.
At the same time, I'm putting pressure on my principals and ultimately teachers that we got to perform on these test guys, right? And we did all the things, and we did. At the end of the day, I've been playing this game a long time, and when I play a game, I like to win, right? So you look at our scorecard, we're winning, and great. But to what end? And who cares? And is it really making a difference in the lives of children to the point where they, again, have this agency and vision for their life that is so palpable that they are empowered as an 18-year-old going into adulthood to grab hold of life and,
Right.
and to live it? And I'm not sure schools as we know them are designed to do that. And certainly I'm convinced increasingly that the testing obsession is not giving us the ability to do that. And it's actually distracting, sucking joy, becoming a myopic obsession that is not worth the time that we give it.
Your work in the Innovation Center is still relatively new. And if we give ourselves permission to recognize that real change, enduring change, is step by step, I guess the question, or maybe it's about giving yourself permission to like forgive yourself for decisions of the past because you have this greater goal in mind for kids. So really the question is, so what's next in terms of how do you begin integrating for kids as you learn? It's an important lesson, although maybe it's just learning from an experience to then say, okay, we know I watched this documentary and I'm seeing kids who exit each day with agency and they have real jobs and they have real idea of where their future is going. How do I then provide that for my kindergartners as well?
Yeah, certainly. So a couple of things I would say.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I posted on LinkedIn. So Monday night, I had a board meeting and our board adopted our new strategic plan, 2030. So 2025 is over. We're now going into 2030, 5-year plan. It's called Elevate 2030. And I'm so proud because we reflected and we doubled down, man. We doubled down and said, we're not going to abandon that vision that we had. And while, yes, we didn't actualize it to the extent that we were hopeful for back in 2020, we're not going to abandon it. So literally, we're taking the rubrics off the shelf around skills and disposition, dusting them off. We're doubling down on project-based learning. I posted on LinkedIn and love for people to look at it. It's a beautiful plan that screams student agency. And it's something that will guide our work going forward. And quite frankly, I believe that my team and our school board is more committed than ever to making that a reality for kindergarten through 12th grade, every experience in the school division, not just the Innovation Center. And certainly the Innovation Center has been a proof of concept that has been like, wow, this is not only working, it's amazing.
Yeah. It sounds like it's an incubator. And so then it can influence the rest of your system.
Absolutely. And it's funny, the kids at the high school will tell you, because they still spend time at their traditional high school, which is 500 yards away. They literally walk to it. And it is a different experience. Like I was there just now, right? Today, before I came onto the podcast, I was at both places. Different feeling, different experience. It's just different. And it's something that we can unpack and scale across the school division. And we're doing little things like we created a freshman academy. And now freshman academies have been around for a while, but to what extent can we bring the freshmen together and have that agency within a smaller space, creating smaller communities?
Gotcha. So not just as a traditional sort of advisory.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we had a really great brainstorming session at the middle school around, okay, how do we bring the career thinking down to 6th grade? And that's going to be an exciting project. How might we have similar experiences at our middle school like we have at the Innovation Center?
That's fantastic. Tell me about, as you're going through this work, because I can remember in 2020 when we were doing our strategic plan, we said it was like 2020 vision. The future it's clear. And then of course, I had that on like everybody's computers. It was like put on everyone's desktop, and then the pandemic hit. And so then it just became an on-running joke of like, how clear is it today? Still clear? But so I like Elevate 2030. That to me is just marvelous. As you've been doing this work, because while we started in the earlier part about your brothers coining this Tom Sawyer, I actually think Tom Sawyer does a lot of things that are in his self-interest. And what I see you doing is really for the community's interest and rallying people. So it is elevating Tom Sawyer as well. And tell me about relationships. What did you learn about relationships, or what new relationships formed as you were asking a community that seemed like it's always been interested in doing even better for its kids? So what a great district to be able to be a leader. But I'm curious, how did you lead that work? What were those conversations? What did you learn about relationships?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, having a compelling vision that resonates with people is a great place to start. And like I said earlier, one of the beautiful things about career technical education, it is a galvanizing topic. I found in any conversation. Any adult in America is going to say, yes, I wish I had that. I wish I had more of that. Yes, that's what I want for my kid or my grandkid. It's 100% bipartisan. There's very little politics involved. And that was very helpful. The initial conversations with our business and industry, what I found was everyone gets to that point of, yes, we all love CTE. But when you get to the place of, okay, how are you going to partner with us? There's a fear factor on the part of industry, businesses and when I talk about partnering, like we wanted our kids to be out in the workforce. It's a key cornerstone of the Innovation Center. They're not just at school. They are literally on internships, work-based learning, job sharing all the time. And kids love it because they love what kid doesn't want to leave school? Literally today, my daughter was doing a job shadowing at the airport, our local airport, meeting with the CEO of the airport, walking around, learning about what he does as the CEO of a small regional airport. And that happens all the time. And so the initial fear factor from businesses was like, well, I love everything, but 16-year-olds, like, oh, that's a little scary. And because of relationship and trust, we took baby steps with that. And I'll tell you, right now, it's gangbusters because the businesses love our kids.
They've discovered how smart they are and how committed they are to being a great ambassador for your school district, themselves, their families, and they're really interested in learning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're very impressive. And so now that we don't have that barrier, but
I love it.
Relationships.
I visited a school district north of Kansas City. They have a CAPS program. So the kids go half the day to their high school, traditional high school, and then the other half of the day they have internships within industry. And in this case, they build deer blinds and these like little trailers on work sites. And when we asked the chairman or the CEO, what do you like about having the kids here? And he said, well, that one over there saved me, I can't remember how many hundreds of thousands of dollars. He said, he figured out there was a better way for us to paint these things. And the kid's was beaming. He said, that kid saved me a ton of money.
Yeah.
And he'll have a job when he leaves if he wants one.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I'll tell you a flip of that, though.
Yes.
On the relationship side. So it was interesting to navigate the relationships internally because even the name Innovation Center sounds really cool, right? And so we've had to navigate teachers in particular who are not a part of the Innovation Center and their value and like navigating the feelings of they're getting all this attention over here. What about us? And so that was, again, back to relationships. You got to be careful of elevating one over the other and making. That's
really an important revelation, particularly with the documentary coming out, and it will be popular. Absolutely. Yeah, it really will be.
We have had to be very sensitive to that and not minimize the work that's being done every day at John Haley High School. And there's great work. I was just there and watching an English teacher and a history teacher doing this awesome, amazing, collaborative, deep dive research project that's full of student agencies. Yeah, that on the relationship side as a leader, you got to be careful what you amplify.
I think that's super important to understand the perspectives that people bring. There's a systems thinking card that I use about perspective. And one is there's a dog in the window and there's a child who's like, that dog I really want that dog. I'm going to love it. And the parent's looking at the dog going, that's an expensive dog, right? We all bring perspective to the things that we see. And so people are going to see Winchester as it becomes even more well-known, not just regionally, but nationally. And so how do you manage that sort of interest and perspective that people are going to bring to your district? That's interesting. I guess my last question would be for you. You're 10 years now in Winchester. What advice would you give to an aspiring leader?
Well, I always remind people, like, one of my principles is I always way running towards something, not away from something. So what's your motivation is my first question. If your motivation is because you don't like what you're currently doing, that's the wrong motivation, right? I know for me, I had a fire in the belly to make changes. And so I ran towards leadership because I was dissatisfied with the status quo. And other people in my life had told me, hey, you're already a leader currently as a teacher. We need you to continue that journey. And I certainly had great mentors along the way that elevated myself and pushed me. And that's the other thing I would say, listen to the people around you. If you don't have a mentor, you need one, and informal, if anything. But most leaders have had what I call sponsors along the way. And I think of my principal who hired me, and she was my champion. And she, to this day, I consider her to be one of the best leaders I've ever worked for. And so if you don't have that, you need that, and listen to them as they push you down the road. Man, I got a lot of advice.
Just one piece of advice.
Just one. Yeah.
That is excellent advice. Truly, it really is. It can be a lonely job. That sometimes is an excuse for us as superintendents. It doesn't have to be, particularly if we can find those around us who can support us, be honest with us, and allow us to lead and allow us to make mistakes, and then also to allow us to reflect and do better. Our guest today was Jason Van Heukelum, the superintendent of the Winchester Public Schools. And I'm so grateful for your time. I know you're super busy. Some of the things I wrote as we were talking, first of all, to remind people about multiple choice, the documentary. Second is to look at your strategic plan. So we'll make sure that's in the show notes. I think that's going to be super important as people are trying to chart their own paths, which should be theirs, but having a framework to help them guide that for those conversations is important. I want to reflect on something you said early on in the conversation about waiting 5 years to decide what to do as a community. So many of us as leaders, we fall victim to the impulse of making a quick decision. We've got this facility, let's do something with it. And it sounds like you were really thoughtful and doing that with intentionality. And more than anything, you mentioned about being someone with conviction, but I think it's conviction with compassion as well. And so I'm grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you.
Welcome back, Peter. What are
Let's start with you, because last week we had Ted Dintersmith, who is the sort of the companion podcast to this one, right? Ted talks about multiple choice, the movie, and it actually is highlighting this school district. And so let's start with what's on your...
I want to start with one thing that I think that really resonated with me. And I want to use his quote, and then I want to make a statement about it. He said, going all the way back to my childhood, and I think that the key pieces that I've carried forward in my leadership experience is casting a bold vision that is imaginative, maybe even provocative, and speaks to the heart of what people in the field really should be done and may seem somewhat audacious and impossible. Exactly. Right then, when he said that, I was like, oh, I'm on this guy's side. Yeah, 100%. No one is inspired. When you set goals in a system and you're like, okay, what we're going to do is make a 0.78 gain on our literacy scores from third grade to fourth grade.
We're going to go from 3.7 to 3.9 on a satisfaction survey.
Exactly. And specifically, we're going to look at moving 3.72 to 3.98 on question 15. Oh my God, shoot me. Like I was working with a school recently and they were doing that. And they were sort of like, we're working on this question. And I said, are you going to create a balloon arch when you hit 3.85? Is it just going to say 3.85? We did it. On question 7. It's not about that. It's about audacious goals that honestly you likely won't meet right away. You set an audacious goal, you will get further than you ever have gotten before. You may not meet it, which is one of the things I think is so hard about education and educators is that when people give us goals, we think the only choice is to meet it. That's it. It's the only choice. And I'm like, actually, I don't think that's the choice at all. I think the choice is grow as far as you can.
Yeah. Well, which is why I find somewhat alarming that some states are now rethinking how they evaluate school districts. You may or may not remember or even know that the way that your assessments work is that typically you get credit for status, meaning how did everyone perform? And then you get credit for the kind of progress that kids make.
Yeah.
And that makes a ton of sense because not all schools are equal, and some kids are going to arrive already meeting that benchmark, and others are going to make tremendous growth and still fall a little bit short.
Yeah.
There are some states that are now considering whether to remove the growth piece, the credit for growth, and only give credit for status, for what the score was. And I thought, oh my God, this flies so in the face of what I believe and with the person I just spoke to in terms of Jason's values and goals. And so, he said something along the lines of many of my ideas center around how do we awaken students and teachers to the joy and creativity that I believe is inside of them.
Right.
And I love that. And
Yeah,
the approach that some states are taking is like, their thought is like, how do I extinguish all joy and sort of vision for creativity, curiosity, innovation? Because clearly I'm not interested. I just want to drill and kill.
I don't think the intent is not to eliminate joy, but it is not a goal. And so
I think they would argue,
well, if it's gone, it's gone.
We all agree we want kids, like their sort of objective truth is we all want kids to succeed. And now the subjective truth is how do we get there and what does success even mean?
Right.
And so the carry on that quote about, awakening the joy and creativity, he says, to some extent, that's been squashed by the narrative around the country that public schools are not good enough.
Right.
So like this whole idea of just over testing and testing and testing is this belief that, well, then I can somehow quantify something, which is that the kids know how to do well in this test. Not that they're going to be creative souls.
So I have a question that might be controversial here, but in the spirit of audaciousness, to what degree is standardized testing important or specifically for property value? That the better the large test score number, the higher the property value in that particular neighborhood, the perception of quality is held there. It's to the point where real estate listings will put the school's name and scores on the listing. So 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and
it gets a 9 out of 10, and the 9 is for state testing, the percentage of kids who, right.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I mean, I think to some extent, because I'm not against testing. I'm really not against assessing.
No.
Because
I hope people don't hear me as against testing.
I didn't, because last week we talked specifically about formative assessment and the value that they give in terms of knowing what a child has mastered and where they need additional support. That's what it should be about. To the point you just made, they're often used to judge and to create a character assessment about the school and the people who are attending that school.
Right.
So, and yes, it goes back to wealth, I think. It goes back to, absolutely. So, yeah.
Can I say one more thing about this, about the concept of the testing? Even the word itself, when you go out to test something, you're trying it out. You're figuring out where the flaws are in your test. Tests are extremely helpful tools, very helpful tools, when the test isn't about understanding what kids don't know, but rather measuring what they know.
Oh,
and how
can I do my best, Jamie? Can I do my best, Jamie? I'm just going to summarize it for you. Ready?
Yeah.
Because he said testing is about understanding what you don't know, right?
Yes.
And instead, testing is being used to judge.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, you said something in it, and again, this is a different pathway in terms of our conversation, but you said being mindful of the words that we use, so testing, and what do we mean by it, and what is its use. Now, how about, we always called it CTE centers or career centers, and Jason was like, oh, no, innovation center.
Yeah.
Like, we name it an innovation center. This is where a buffet of options for kids exists, where I think they said something like, we put a stake in the ground and said, I don't care if you're a college-going family, we believe there's value in these career classes, this exploration. It's no longer that the kids go left and the work kids go right. No, we have a space where all kids come together. Yeah. And so it's an innovation center. And I'm like, I'm a fool, because we called it Career Center North, Career Center South, Career Center Central, and they were the most innovative places. I'm telling you, I don't believe that there's any innovation center in Missouri that was better than Columbia, Missouri's. It was unbelievable what they offered. And yet we were always fighting the community to better understand what we had there. I mean, yes, traditional, like you'd say like, auto mechanics, sure. Engineering, yep. Architecture, you bet. Broadcast television, Photonics, like laser program, right?
Great.
Robotics. We had I mean, marketing, welding, labs. The kids then would move from that lab. They go then to work at the university labs. I mean, it was unbelievable what kids were doing.
Right. It's amazing. I love that. I mean, I think the two innovations that he names is the all, right, which we mentioned at the top of the game here, at the top of the podcast, that every kid doing that is amazing. And that's where I was like, oh, I want to see how this works. Like, how many do you take? Can you take, what are you keeping and not keeping? How does your schedule work? To his point, I basically asked, in creating this innovation center, the innovation to me is the creation of the center and the mandate that everybody do this thing, that we're all doing this thing. Thus, putting a interruption into the historical structure of schooling, of high school. We keep replicating the same thing over and over. He said, God, let me see if I can find it. He says, here, it doesn't, all right. If we're honest with ourselves, high schools in America are exclusively designed to send kids to college. The Carnegie unit, the Latinized curriculum, everybody's going to take 4 English classes, 4 math classes, 4 sciences, etc. Why the hell are we still doing this? What is going on? Why is this still a thing?
And then every superintendent stands at graduation and says, you have fulfilled all the the responsibilities, which is credits earned based on the number. Yeah. It is.
Why are we doing it that way? It's really some of it's inertia, sure, but some of it is like actually the judging of people who have taken the quote right courses to get themselves to some right university, some perfect university is still considered better.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to ask myself, so why do they still do it? It's a way to at least standardize that child in city A and child in town B have at least that there's some sort of this is what a high school, it's our shared image of what a high school graduate means. And I think that there are examples around the country where they're reevaluating how they measure the profile of a graduate and saying it isn't about taking math 1, 2, 3, 4, but rather what are the skills and that a child needs to graduate, and can that be achieved in this English class and that math class and this social studies class? It's exceedingly hard, particularly if you're going to have a standardized, a central government within the state that authorizes and says your children are ready for that next step, because they have to end up, not they have to, because many of them end up in a 2-year or 4-year school with an expectation that they've at least taken these courses. So you're really talking about an overhaul of the entire system, which is so overwhelming. And that's what keeps us in the same path. You don't like it.
I just don't think it's a compelling argument.
I'm just telling you what it is.
I know.
So how would you change it?
Look at all the data. Okay, let's just for the sake of having an example. This is not, I don't have a singular proposal. What I do have,
because it is so overwhelming. 350 million people in 50 states. Come on.
Exactly.
There's no, and we're a decentralized government, right? So we're not a central where they could make a decision, in Germany or Singapore, they say, this is what we're doing. And then everybody does it.
Right. I believe in the standardization of an education that is public and open to everyone. So that is so there we're in agreement. What I also see that's possibly different that I think Jason is creating here. Think of all of the folks who go back to get a certification, older folks, adults that go back to get a certification, a degree of some sort, some way of doing the next thing that they want to do in their career. They all do that in a way. Basically, they all do that on their own time. They figure out how to do that on their own time. They figure out how to balance that with families, with their current job, with all of this other stuff. And so if these people can figure out how to do the thing that motivates them to learn a new thing, then I think we've set the bar way too low for students, because these people, adults.
So maybe that's really the next step. And that's what Jason's doing, is to say, look, I cannot overhaul an entire system that has been entrenched and roots run deep. There are always going to be credits, and this is the way it is. So in light of that, I'm going to ensure that every kid has to take these types of innovative courses or career courses
Yeah.
so that they have exposure and new learning that is not part of the typical high school setup. And
I mean, this
so-
goes to the other part, right? The other part of the Innovation Center that is super innovative is moving all of his English courses up there. I was all in. I think such a
So,
great
I mean,
idea.
yeah. So he's saying, I think he's probably in the same argument as you of like, it's so easy to explain away why it can't be done. And now I'm going to take some steps forward to make it happen. And if you remember in his After Extra, he also is now trying to reconcile, okay, we've got this innovation center. It's the subject of multiple choice. The entire country is talking about this place and this space that is project-based and is really exciting for kids. And now the high school's going, what about us? Are we just a traditional comprehensive high school? And so I do think moving the English classes is one. I think also it's a real opportunity for them to come together and reevaluate, or at least evaluate their compelling purpose.
Well, this
So
goes to,
Yeah.
if the high school comes and says, well, what about us? My answer is like, well, what do you want to be? And then now we're talking.
Now we're off to the races. Well, then you need to get a waiver from your state government, your state education Department of Education, that says you're going to do a crosswalk and show how these courses and the way that children spend their day is the equivalent, like some type of equivalency to a traditional high school transcript.
Sure. Okay.
You say, okay, like this is where you and I differ. I'm like, go spend 1 week like leading a district. And you'd be like, okay. Like, that makes me so mad because every time we propose things, it would be like, no, that can't be done. I'm like, okay, well, who can we talk to? And then it would be, oh, well, you can make a proposal. Okay, now you have to wait a few months. Actually, we did nothing. We just waited you out, and now we're going to say no. And then now I'm going to go to State Board of Education and make a proposal. Oh, we got a temporary permission. That's fine. But that doesn't mean anything to us. We're still going to say no. Okay, now I'm going to go to the legislative branch and try to make that change. No problem. You got a hearing in the House, but the Senate, no one's interested in picking that up. Like, it's crazy trying to change anything.
Yeah.
So I like the way he's doing. He's like, what do I have control over? And I'll do it that way. Like, where do I have influence?
But it does make me think of like, what is the saying about the concept of if you remove one plank from a boat and you replace the plank, it's still that boat. But what if you change all of the planks on the boat? Is it still the same boat?
Yeah, and you want to do it while it's sailing, and I'm telling you, it'll sink.
And I'm saying you don't have a choice. You won't have a choice. So let's replace one plank at a time.
Okay.
And that's what Jason's doing. He's going one plank at a time. And I think you just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a great captain for that ship. The problem is you hope that they have a good succession plan, so when the next captain comes on, they're not like, right? Where they're going, what is all this? No. You know?
Well, if we get that captain next, if
Mutiny! Then we're going for mutiny!
well, you
Call
might.
for mutiny!
You might to what was her name in Very Best, Texas?
Oh, right.
Hopefully that person doesn't move the fences before they know why they were there.
Exactly.
That's
Or
key.
that's a mixed metaphor, so we'll just say remove the planks that we've already
Sure.
replaced.
You don't know why they replaced what planks they did on the boat.
Right.
Because and if they do hire the person that's ready to basically undo and put all the old planks back, then you have a different board and a whole different view.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about the community. Does the community want to keep what it had?
This is such a cool conversation today. You know, I imagine we were really going to be talking about innovation centers, and we'd have. Really, you're talking about like wholesale change and the opportunities to do it. And
It's why I was pitching to Ted last week. Like, I'm ready to send teachers. Let's get teachers out and about seeing the innovation that's in our system, because there's so much of the same that we have a hard time as an educator. I have a hard time even picturing something different.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I did hear from two people who heard the podcast last week and said, what you're advocating for are externships. Like, we're doing that now. We are sending our people, and I think they're referring to sending people into the workforce to see how highly technical that work is and how much analysis and critical thinking is required to do those jobs well. And they want teachers to understand and see that and interact with those who are working in those spaces so they can bring it back to their classrooms with a better understanding. And so I would say, yes, that, and why not also just send them to other schools who are doing these innovative things so they can bring those great learning back to their classrooms as well.
They're both great ideas. Basically, instead of having the former, tech guy who was running tech programs come and teach in high school.
Yeah.
Let's send the teacher to the tech firm, learn a little bit about the tech firm so that when they come back, they're ready to teach.
Oh, it'd be even cooler is, okay, they do that externship where they're visiting the site and doing that kind of stuff. And then why not during the summers, if they have some time, because typically teachers look for work over the summers because we don't pay them enough. What if they could have jobs in those companies just for the summer?
In fact, I'll say, can I be more clear about that? Not that we definitely don't pay them enough, but we also don't pay them during the summer.
Yeah.
That's why people get summers off. It's
not summers off, right? So careful not to say summers off. No off. There's no off.
Oh,
they're either doing their
just
degree
not
work,
paid.
they're like continuing their work, they're planning, yeah. So anyway, this has been great. So look, I'm excited for his Elevate 2030 because they're launching their new show.
That's right. As opposed to it's very clear.
Yeah, I know. 2020, the future is clear. No, it wasn't. There was a pandemic and we all ran for the hills.
We'll end on that as it relates to giving you props. This is why you created this podcast. When you share those stories, my heart grows for you.
Oh, thanks.
Because it's wonderful. It's just so funny, hilarious. Like, yes, right thing. Ah, crap. And I have it on every screen.
Every screen. It didn't matter where I walked. People were like, hey. And then people would like turn on their screens just so I could see it.
Oh my God. The joke must have gotten so tiring.
No, I laughed every time because it was so ridiculous. 2020, the future is clear. Because I would like meet with the tech team and say, okay, Arden, we'll have glasses and we're going to have the road ahead. And it's going to be 2020. The future is clear. Oh, well. Anyway, you've been listening.
The glasses are there because, is it clear if you have glasses? Because I can.
No, I know, but I was thinking my own thing. Sometimes we need a prescription to kind of see better because sometimes it's not so clear.
It's so funny. Yes,
Lord,
you've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents in Leadership podcast. I'm Jamie Mansan.
I'm Peter Stiepelman.
Thank you for being here today. Really enjoyed it, Peter.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Music for An Imperfect Leader was written and arranged by Ian Varley. Sam Falbo created our artwork, a wood print inspired Daruma doll butterfly. Remember, imperfect leadership is not a scarlet letter. It's a badge of honor. It recognizes that serving as a lead learner is about being a vulnerable leader, an empathetic leader, a compassionate leader. We are proud to be imperfect leaders, so join us next time for another episode of An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast.